Well, hello again. During this holy month of Ramadan, the Dialogue Institute of Australia, through its New South Wales chapter, the Affinity Intercultural Foundation, and along with its Victorian chapter, we're talking about the AIS, the Australian Intercultural Society. We've been running this program called Ramadan Conversations. We've got another week of Ramadan still to go, and the idea throughout the whole exercise has been to keep us sane, to keep us informed, and to make us feel a little more connected with what the community has been during this extraordinary time of disruption. The AIS, by the way, is a not-for-profit with the aim of strengthening mutual respect and understanding between people of diverse communities through this meaningful engagement. Programs like this one. And the AIS, by the way, is celebrating a birthday this year. It's 20 years since inception. And throughout that time, it's pioneered many initiatives, including mosque open days and, of course, the annual Ramadan Iftar dinner program. Ramadan Mubarak. My name is George Donikian. We have three guests tonight, and before I introduce them, let me just take a moment to welcome my co-host, or the wingman, as he likes to be known. His name is Fatih Tuncer. Fatih is an executive member of the AIS, and he's been involved with the Australian Intercultural Society since the day it started. He works for local government in Aboriginal and cultural diversity, which basically spends many of its days looking at strategic ways to implement principles of interculturalism across council. Things like placemaking, community development. They look at urban design, open space, and built infrastructure. And of course, they do it by working closely with the Aboriginal and multicultural diversity. Really important things. And Fatih has been someone who's shown enormous passion and commitment to those causes. He is an academic, of course, with a background in political and social sciences. He has a particular interest and passion for earth ethics, for Islamic studies, which is an important thing to be doing, especially at this time of the year, this holy month of Ramadan, and interculturalism, which I'll ask him to explain to me, because a lot of people have been asking, what is interculturalism? A pleasure to have him return as my host during this conversation hour. Fatih, what is interculturalism?
Good question, George. And I actually get that asked quite often, believe it or not, because people get confused sometimes. You know, people talk about multiculturalism and they talk about interculturalism. So if I could give you a quick answer, multiculturalism is acknowledging that we're a society made up of different diversities, like a mosaic, for example. It acknowledges that we exist amongst one another. And we appreciate each other through culture, through music, through food, or anything to do with that. However, interculturalism proposes that mixing is more favourable than living in silos. So while it acknowledges, multiculturalism, it also encourages interaction. And what I love about interculturalism is that sometimes it can be a little challenging because it never proposes to be a safe space. It's about getting down and digging deep into our thought processes. What makes us us? Who are we? Why is it that we eat particular foods? What is it that's in our history? And that might be in conflict with another. But it's through that dialogue, it's through that mixing, it's through getting to know the other that we get to find out the truths, and we get to find out the way ahead, and that we're human in our connections. So.
That's one of the things that we've been denied over this past holy month of Ramadan, the opportunity to be together, to mix. How have you coped through this period of disruption?
Again, good question, because I don't want to discount the suffering that's been caused through these disruptions for society, whether it's people losing their jobs, etc. But I think it's taught us to do things in a new way. And reflecting back on what we're doing at the moment, I mean, AIS, I don't think would have even considered having these Ramadan conversations online if it wasn't the disruption caused towards our usual Ramadan iftar dinners, where we all gathered at different locations with different organizations. So this has been a great learning curve. But it's interesting, George, because we had a conversation a few weeks ago, and I'm not sure if you remember, but we talked about what will we learn at the end of this. And I ask myself that question every day. And what's interesting is, Paul Ramage posted something on LinkedIn which I really liked, and he said, "We've managed to flatten the curve, but let's see if we can flatten the curve of our personal interests, which is our predatory consumerism and capitalism, as opposed to what the world can sustain, what our Earth can sustain." So it'll be interesting, the lessons we take from this and how we move forward, what we make our new normal. I mean, Sundays are usually fresh fish market days, fresh fish days for us. And I was driving to South Melbourne Market, and I drove past Crown Casino just yesterday. And I thought, the city seems very peaceful. And I had a bit of a look around, and I thought, Crown's closed, And it was just interesting because I didn't see anyone who looked miserable. Everyone was jogging, at the park by the Yarra, just enjoying each other, really. And I thought to myself, and I came back and I had a bit of a Google, and I thought, let me look at some of the positive things that may have come out of this. And I found out that in this COVID phase, people who gamble, they've hit the jackpot. They've saved $1.5 billion in pokies alone. That's not including what people spend in casinos. That's pokies alone. That's about $38 million a day. So when we come out of this, what will be interesting is, what will we make our new normal? Do we want to go back to the normal? Let's have a bit of a self-reflection, and let's think about what we want to keep from our old normal and what we want to make our new normal. And I think that's the greatest lesson to come out of this, and I'm sure you'll agree. But
I will agree. The only person that might disagree is Daniel Andrews, who will be concerned about the tax that he's not getting for the coffers of Victoria.
That's right.
Continue the program. We've got some guests.
That's right. Yeah. So that's a big discussion that we can probably schedule another program for. So I'll let that be for now. So do we have a program in store for our viewers today? We have 3 distinguished guests, from the world of emergency health, education, and journalism once again. And, not only do we have these great minds who will be on our program tonight, but George will also have a great musical performance.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much, Fatih. Let's introduce our first guest. To get, as they say, the introduction. Here comes. Let's welcome the Chief Executive Officer of Ambulance Victoria. I'm talking about Associate Professor Tony Walker. Tony, for those of you that don't know, registered paramedic with over 30 years' experience. He's worked in a range of senior clinical, operational, and leadership roles within the ambulance sector over that time. And over the past 6 years alone, he's led quite significant transformation at Ambulance Victoria, with the whole mission statement to improve the health and well-being of the workforce and the rest that they provide to the broader community. Worthy goals and worthy pursuits. Tony Akullo of the Australian College of Paramedicine and a board director of the Emergency Services Foundation and the Australasian Council of Ambulance Authorities. And he doesn't stop there. He's also put his hand up to be on the Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia. Tony Walker, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Good evening, George.
Welcome,
Good evening, Fatih. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Good to see you both. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. Tony, if I knew I wouldn't go off cam, I'd actually stand up and salute you and your team. So just I'm sending all my love and respect to you and your crew. And I know that we've had a strong relationship with Ambulance Victoria. I'm speaking about Australian Intercultural Society, of course. So that's a relationship that we definitely treasure. So we're really happy to have you on the program tonight. But I wanted to ask you, as the head, and also I want to mention that Ambulance Victoria has gone through some great transformation, and that's a lot of that is due to the leadership of yourself and also Ken Lee, for example. But that's not to discount the contribution of every single staff and member of your team. But I wanted to ask you, as the head of a large emergency service, how have you been doing at the moment?
Oh, I've been doing really well. It's been an interesting year, I've got to say. I mean, we've come off the back of bushfires, so I planned to have some time off at Christmas. That changed pretty quickly. I've come into a very busy few months with the bushfires, and then we've literally come straight into COVID. So it's been a it's been surreal, I've got to say, and I can't thank my workforce enough. They've just stepped up and kept the term pivot's the term we use a lot in our organisation at the moment. They just shifted and changed to adapt to an environment that has just kept moving and moving and moving. And but I'm doing well. I'm supported by a great team. I've got a great family, and I'm learning, like all Victorians and around Australians, to adapt to this new norm that I'm in at the moment.
And
Tony, sorry, how are you mentioned the staff coping? Tell us about the front line, those who've done just an incredible job. What are some of the challenges that they're currently facing daily?
George, their world has changed dramatically. So they are coming to work every day and putting themselves out into a community where they have this understandable fear that they may contract a disease that can be lethal, and so that plays on their minds. And it's certainly we're providing a lot of support to help them around their mental health and well-being in that space, because it's a genuine issue. Their day consists of attending close to collectively around 200 potential COVID patients every day. Now, not all of those are clearly infected, but they meet the symptoms of it. So they're dressing up in hot overalls and hot gowns, masks. They are having to go in and adapt their care to patients who are equally anxious about what's going on. They're then transporting our patients to hospital, where we're finding that they're then having to hand over into a health service that is also under significant pressure and has different ways of accepting patients now in the new COVID world. So I've been blown away by how great they've achieved, what they've achieved, and how great they've been. But it's taking a toll. There's no question. They're in fact, often we describe a bit of what we call anticipatory anxiety right now. We've pivoted the organisation. They're ready to go for a war that we hope never comes. And there are little skirmishes every day, if you like, in the way we attend. But when we look overseas to what's happened in the UK and the United States, I'm so grateful to say to live in Victoria and Australia at the moment. It's what our leaders have done to ensure that we're as prepared as we can be, and have avoided to date some of the issues overseas has been phenomenal.
Have you been morphing the protocols? Have they been changing?
They have. We've had to think differently and work with our medical directors and other health professionals to think differently about the types of treatments we provide to people with asthma. We've had to modify our asthma treatment, had to modify how we deal with cardiac arrest, for example, with a focus of ensuring our paramedics stay safe, but at the same time giving the best care we can to people who call us. We've ramped up significantly our secondary triage area, where we have paramedics and nurses who are taking calls and providing advice to avoid ambulance care. And something I've got to say I never thought I would have seen 6 months ago is that I've had a situation where the community aren't calling us for some cases. So particularly older people in the community are scared of calling an ambulance, going to hospital where they may fear they may be exposed to COVID-19. And that's led to about 200 or 300 cases a day dropping down of people who would normally call us. Now, some of those probably didn't need to, and that's good. They're finding different ways to care for themselves, but there are others I really worry about, and we've been doing a lot of work to try and encourage people to make sure they're calling us when they need us.
So Tony, during this time where there's heightened anxiety and, as you said, fear, where people are choosing not to call Ambulance Victoria, what is Ambulance Victoria doing to bring people together during this time of social distancing?
Well, we're playing a big role in the use of social media. So we both internally and externally. So we've taken the view that we have an important role to play in the community to help connect the community. So to tell the good stories of things that are going on, to message to the community the important things they can do to keep them safe and us safe. And internally, we've done a lot of work in communicating differently. I can't connect with my workforce as I used to. So we're using an internal Facebook site. So even tonight, we've had online sessions with our staff to engage with us and talk about key issues. We're polling and doing work with them online to get to hear the things they might need to hear about. We've brought specialists, not dissimilar to what you're doing tonight, bringing in specialist speakers for our staff who can give them assurance around COVID-19 infection control, the things they can do to keep themselves safe, and celebrating the important things. I'm using a lot more videos. We had a great video, in fact, this last week on Ramadan, that's included a number of our staff of Islamic faith. It's been brilliant, and they've told you can ask anything you can ask. Pretty much, they're similar to the you can ask that, similar to the ABC show, where they've been able to answer questions that people would often ask them at Ramadan in a way that they would often get the opportunity to do at the dinners that we can't unfortunately have this year.
Tony Walker is our guest on Ramadan Conversations. Tony, you'd have a lot of collegiate friends and also professionals around the world. Are you liaising with them at this time to see how they're taking on board the challenges that face us day in, day out?
We certainly are, George. We are a big connected family in some ways in the emergency services and health sector, and so we've reached out to each other to learn from what we're doing. So, for example, Scotland and Wales are two ambulance services that are very similar to our own, and so we've looked at some of the work they've been doing and introduced that into some of our scenario planning for the worst case scenarios that we hope never come, but we've got to be ready for. We've spoken to health colleagues in the United States, and in fact, just last week attended a video conference with the head of emergency services over there, where he was taking us through the hospital that he's responsible for, and it was just surreal to be in the middle of New York City at this time to see what's going on and to be part of it. So we're learning a lot from each other, sharing a lot of information, and making sure that we're preparing ourselves on the basis of what we're seeing in places that have really had significant COVID-19 cases, so that we're well prepared. As I said, we hope, we plan for the worst and hope for the best, and so we're learning a lot from overseas to make sure we're prepared if we ever saw the sorts of disease numbers that they have. Now, I don't expect we will, but we can never be complacent here, because we saw how quickly it can get away from us in the United States and UK.
Yeah. Another for you, Fatih.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, sorry. The internet broke out for a second there. So, Tony, the Ambulance Victoria is a community service, and Ramadan is a community celebration. What have you seen in the community that gives you hope during this time?
And it's an interesting question. If I look back to, say, 8 to 10, 12 weeks ago, I was a bit worried about our community. I was worried by what I was seeing in the hoarding of toilet paper and some of the reactions to people. I think, like many of us, we're all sitting there going, where am I going to get toilet paper from? But it was interesting how society and people reacted. And then they shifted. Then I saw the caring come back into what I've seen, and it's expanded beyond what it was prior to COVID. I'm seeing people taking interest in their neighbours now in a different way than they ever did before. I'm shopping for them, talking to them. We've been forced to stop for a bit and in some ways enjoy time with families that actually, getting to know each other differently. Our workforce, it's interesting. My sick leave is right down at the moment. I was asking some questions of late to understand what that might be. And there's that real sense of camaraderie and wanting to be there to support colleagues at a time like this. And a few of my colleagues said it's actually I can legitimately leave the home. So it's interesting, people are able to legitimately leave their house. So that caring is coming through loud and clear. And just this week, Mentone Grammar sent us 300 messages that their kids had written to send off to our paramedics to thank them for all that they've done. Paramedics are getting offered coffees. I'm seeing, they're offered, for example, just this week, we got offered some gloves that we can't use, but we've donated to the local food preparation area at one of the hospitals. So there's this sense of wanting to care and give back that I've got to say it's always been part of the Australian spirit, but I think it's been lost in some of the commercialism and some of the daily drives. So no, it's fantastic.
Fantastic.
You speak of fantastic collegiate work. I saw a story only the other day about a group of Australian nurses overseas at the moment in New York doing what they can to help the health system there, which has been absolutely inundated. The numbers coming out of New York alone have been horrendous. Can you think one of the biggest cities in the world, one of the richest countries in the world, and here we are suffering a pandemic, and they are seriously struggling. That's extraordinary.
It's incredible, George. I look at what's occurring over there, and you know, the impact it's had on all the health services, the community. I mean, you know, we've experienced things here, obviously, in a way we've had to think differently about what we all do. But compared to what we've seen overseas, I mean, we made some very early decisions here in this country that have clearly proven themselves to be the right decisions. And I think we should be grateful to live in a place where our leaders have felt the confidence to do and make hard decisions that would not have been easy, I'm sure. And we're seeing today the benefits of that. In other places, they're now trying to catch up, and it's obviously you know, it's so difficult to do because of the volume of cases they've now got in the community.
Tony Walker, thank you for joining us and giving us a sense of you know, what's been happening behind the scenes, especially with your organisation, Ambulance Victoria. And again, thank you for being a part of Conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely talking to you both. Thank you.
Well, Fatih is another specialist, 3 decades of experience in the newsroom, and dare I say, a passionate advocate for equality and excellence in journalism. I'm talking about a friend of ours, Karen Percy from the ABC. For those who don't know her work, from about 2006 through to about 2009, she was the ABC's Southeast Asia correspondent, and from about 2010 to 2013, she was a brave soul. She became the freelance correspondent based in Moscow. Talk about taking the bit between her teeth and doing something different. Karen, of course, is an elected official of the media section of the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, and she also sits proudly on the board of the Walkley Foundation, which, of course, supports excellence in journalism. And add to that, I should compliment her because she did it last year as a co-host at the International Festival of Language and Culture in Melbourne. Karen Percy, thank you for joining us.
G'day there, George. Nice to see you. We've got a long history, George and I, way back to Channel 10 in Adelaide. We won't say exactly when that was, but really nice to be here.
No. I'd almost forgotten about that time together.
How could you forget, George?
No, you're right. Absolutely right. How could I? Fatih, get me out of here.
Yeah, I'll just interject there. Yeah, so welcome, Karen. And it's a pleasure to have you here, especially because we recently marked World Press Freedom Day. And during that time, some commentators mentioned that, you know, media freedom and the importance of media in liberal democracies such as Australia, it was a bit shaky before, you know, the coronavirus pandemic actually. So, you know, how do you think we're going to come out of this? You know, what will media freedom look like at the end of this?
Well, it depends how much media is left. The COVID-19 pandemic is really slaying the media industry at the moment. There has never been a time when people have been consuming more news, particularly, you know, COVID-related news, but there's just no business model left. Nobody's advertising. Nobody's prepared to pay the bills. So, you know, we've seen a slew of regional newspapers across Australia close their doors sometime. It might only be for the COVID period, but there's a real fear that a lot of those newspapers won't reopen. We've heard today that 10 Daily, which has been a website sort of looking at kind of a different aspect on news, they'll be shuttering by Friday. BuzzFeed, we heard just last week. We also know that the AAP, Australian Associated Press, we hope there's a buyer out there somewhere, but you know, there'll be cuts at the ABC at some stage. We know all of the big networks and the big papers are having financial issues right now. So, you know, the model is broken. We know the model is broken of advertisers coming in and keeping journalism alive. We've got some philanthropy going on here. But, you know, that's the real issue at the moment is press freedom's a huge problem. We knew before coming into the pandemic that we had some issues here in Australia and around the world of governments tightening up on the kinds of information that they didn't want journalists to have. The freedom of information sector in Australia is, I would say, a joke. You try to get information from governments, it doesn't happen. We know that Annika Smethurst from News Corporation, her home was raided. They've at least, I think, dropped the charges against her. But my colleagues at the ABC, Dan Oakes and Sam Clark, still have this very big cloud over them after raids by the AFP last year. So it's not in a good shape, and it's not going to be any better, I don't think, with fewer people agitating from the inside, as is going to happen with so many fewer people ultimately by the time this is all over.
Scary.
Karen, Percy, we've got to think differently. The media barons have long gone. The great white hope, the white knights have evaporated. So the business model somehow has to be not only revisited, but shaken up because we're not going to get the quality journalism any other way. And of course, right in the middle of all of this, we've seen another pandemic. It's called fake news and misinformation, which just about fills our day and every monitor or device we use, especially during the pandemic. So what's that going to mean for the media sector when, you need to get up and give us the latest on a crisis that's happening? How are we going to do it?
Well, there's fake news and there's fake news. There's the fake news that Donald Trump talks about, which is in fact anything that's just not agreeing with his side of politics or daring to hold him to account. So that's not actually fake news. That's him trying to dissuade any kind of criticism. But there's a huge amount of misinformation and disinformation that's particularly on Facebook and Google and other platforms that's just utter garbage. And a journalist like me and my colleagues at present are spending a huge amount of our time trying to dispel what seems to be very easily shared information that is, not sourced, not verified. It's not actually being put out there by anybody with any kind of credibility. And here we are toiling away, talking to the experts, making sure we get it right, trying to be factual, trying to make it accessible for people, and they're just ignoring it. So it's a huge problem all around. We need to actually educate people to be much, much better consumers of news. Now, I hate to say it, but it's an older demographic in particular that's particularly bad at sharing some of this utter nonsense, where it's just it's a flick of the, forward on the email or share on Facebook without actually sometimes reading it, without looking at the source, and then without asking what the motivations of some of the people there might be. I had somebody share with me an audio clip through one of the big social media companies that was purporting to be, it was an English language speaking person, but purporting to be in France, in Spain, translating a Spanish version of a Chinese morgue report. Now, you've got to ask yourself, you don't know this person. It's coming via, very strange ways. And you've got to ask yourself, why is somebody sending this to me? And why on earth would I believe it? So I think we really need to ensure that people have a really good understanding about how damaging fake news is and that kind of misinformation. And it turns out that audio clip was in fact another kind of virus. It was basically designed for you to open. It would send all manner of gremlins into your system and you would get hacked. So, and what it was telling you was what people wanted to hear. It says, just gargle a little bit of vinegar and you'll be fine. The pandemic's not really all that bad. So people need to actually be better consumers and have their eyebrow way up there going, I don't believe this, and tell me why I should believe it. So going to really the kind of sites that are important, of course, the ABC, we're reliable, we trust our sources, you can trust us. We've gone to great depths to verify. Okay, I might not be able to run my eye over a piece of research, but I'm going to be relying on research that's been peer reviewed from somebody who's been published in a number of publications. And also, as an ABC journalist, I am, like my colleagues at the ABC, some of the most heavily scrutinised reporters in this country. There's a very formal complaint system that you have to go through, and I have to, correct anything I get wrong. So people need to take a very close look at where information is coming from.
So, I mean, you raised an interesting point, Karen. We sometimes underestimate the power that we have because we have a global audience in front of us from, the comfort of the laptop in front of us or the iPad in front of us. And people like to get information and news from alternative sources, and they like to have a bit of a mix. So, in a world where some people, access their media resources through traditional means, or whether it's social media, etc., how do you propose, other than what you've mentioned about the ABC, how can we pick and choose which are trusted sources, and how do we become better consumers?
Well, for starters, have you ever heard of them is a good start. It's not just the ABC, there's The Guardian. There are lots of great organisations out there that do really, really good, solid journalism. So you need to have a look at the source. You actually have to have a look at what that news organisation's all about. And, that's just a simple Google, The Guardian search, find out where it is, and you'll find out that it's, and it's not owned by anybody in particular. It's kind of a trustee that they, you can find out quite a bit about their ownership and their structure. Now, they're progressive media organisation. They would admit that themselves. So you have to do a little bit of homework. And that's the real problem. People aren't actually prepared to do the homework either. It's very easy just to see something that's very black and white and not actually do any of the hard yards. So even though there's a lot of great work out there, but there are lots of good organisations. BuzzFeed did really fantastic work. And some of the material that is shared, the New York Times, the Washington Post, some of the big organisations too in Europe and the UK, the BBC, The Guardian, The Independent, there might be slants, if you like, or they're coming from a perspective. There might be a conservative or a progressive bent from their editorial stance, but you can still, organisations that are still looking at facts and trying to ensure facts. But we do have a real danger here that people are only listening to what they want to hear. And that's dangerous on lots of fronts. So, people need to do a bit of homework. It's, you want to be informed, you have to actually take some proactive steps to do that.
And Karen, when I was listening to that, Karen, when I was listening to that, it actually took me back to my childhood. And I remember, when, and
I'm not that old.
No. When people went overseas, like for example, I come from a Turkish background, and when relatives would go overseas to Turkey and they would ask my father, "What do you want when we come back?" He would say, "Can you get me a copy of the newspaper there?" So he would receive the news that was being published in Turkey a week later, and he would consume that as it was current, right? And part of that challenge I think that we face today is, that fact checking, everything is fantastic, but sometimes people want it now. They don't want to wait. They don't want to wait a day. They don't want to, go through all that fact checking. They want to consume everything as it's happening now.
They don't have to fact check everything, but they do have to look at the sources. They're being lazy if they don't think they actually have to be more rigorous about what they're looking at, because we've got this real kind of contradiction, if you like. It's just like fake news. You're telling me all the wrong stuff, but then I'm not prepared to do anything about ensuring that I do know the right stuff. So, there's a real contradiction here. And look, there are real concerns. I know Google and Facebook are both working with authorities. They've kind of been dragged kicking and screaming to some degree, but they are working with the authorities to try and counter as much as they can with fake news. Facebook's putting in a lot of time and effort to try and ensure stuff doesn't go as crazy, but there's still more they can be doing. And there's also the Russian bots and other bots elsewhere that are deliberately putting this misinformation about the place. So there's got to be more kind of, I guess, education around that as well. It's just like, if you're sharing something from a Russian bot, you are the fake news. You are the disseminator of the fake news. So you can have a go at me all you like about, whether you like what I'm saying or not, or what I'm reporting or not. But if you are disseminating stuff from Russian bots, you are the problem.
Karen, there is another thing that I want you to address, and that is to do with, we talk about no advertising. What about the people who are advertising, and they're advertising a story, and it really is not a story, it's them editorializing. They're prepared to pay their way onto a newspaper that they know no longer has the wherewithal or the standing that it once had. The great mastheads of Australia have really become very much weaker, but it doesn't stop a smart cookie to go and spend some money and have a strategic plan and create a bit of fake news for their own need.
Well, I think, I'm not sure of the specific examples that you're thinking of there, George. I'm not sure I've seen anything that blatant. Well, that was advertising, though, and made very obviously to be advertising. So, look, he's certainly paid a lot of money, and it's been proven that what he bought is not going to do what he said it's going to buy. But that's that's right. Like, he's put out a huge paper out, but it's very obvious that it's an advertorial or an advert. So there's definitely that is of concern, but it's obvious that it's Clive and it's Clive's point of view, and you need to take it at that face value, because there is still this issue about freedom of speech and being able to say what you want to say. So, but I do think in times like this, when it's a health crisis, it's a global health crisis, that there actually should be greater scrutiny. I agree with you that having that kind of prominent display of that kind of information is quite damaging, and that perhaps our authorities, our governments ought to be looking at that as something that's actually undermining the work they're doing. So I think there should be exceptional circumstances. We don't want everybody to censor material as such. That's not what anybody's after, but certainly ensuring that responsible, accurate information is being put out there is really, really important. I think consumers are pretty good at recognising the blatant advertorial or the blatant advertisement and that kind of thing, I think, savvy. But there is, and so much of what's being shared on Facebook isn't actually news. It's just silly memes, and it's somebody's opinion on something, and it's, just been kind of packaged up in a way that's easily accessible and easily shareable. So a lot of it's not actually news at all. So people need to kind of look at that as well. As if you want to share garbage that's been put out there by Russian bots, that's fine. But I think there's that, you're right, George, particularly exceptional times, unprecedented times means that we need exceptional and unprecedented ability to kind of stop this information. I think that's probably where globally we've been failing, not doing enough about stopping some of the absolute nonsense that's out there.
Karen, Percy, you've been a delight, and thank you very much for giving us an insight into some of the challenges, especially that our young graduates are having to cope with. Can you imagine? You've worked to come into this medium, and you're skilled. You're probably better skilled than a lot of the journalists that came before you, and you've got these challenges and these waters, these very difficult waters to navigate. I feel for every young man of rare talent who I know ultimately they'll find their way. What a difficult time to come into the media.
Absolutely. And there is a lot of distress amongst the younger reporters I talk to, that they've gone to all this hard work to verify, to make sure something's factually sourced. And then, dad turns around and said, yeah, but I saw this on Facebook. So it's true. We need all of us need to take some responsibility ourselves.
Thank you very much once again for joining us on Ramadan Conversations. Karen Percy.
Ramadan Mubarak all.
So, George, it's that time of the night when we're in for a musical treat. Emra Akın. The time just flies.
Not ABBA. So it's not ABBA. It's not
No.
Steve. Who have you got for us?
No, Abba couldn't fly over because of the restrictions, but we do have Emrah Akın, who's become a regular on our show now. And you know, he has an amazing talent for the bağlama, which is, you know, similar to the bouzouki or the saz. And tonight he'll be performing a piece which is a Turkish folk song, and it's called Neyleyim Köşkü, Neyleyim Sarayı, and it loosely translates to, you know, what does the wealth of this world matter, whether it be a mansion or a castle, if I don't have you. So it's a love song, and I think it's a good time to reflect on, you know, some of the conversations that we've had. And while we're listening to this, let's think about what is, you know, what is the value of the wealth of this world if we didn't have our health, if we didn't have access to good and free news, and have the loved ones around us. So over to you, Emre.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, how are you all? Hope everyone's enjoying the last week of Ramadan, especially with the easing of some of the restrictions. Today, once again, I'll be joining with my bağlama. Thank you so much for having me on the program, and enjoy.
Yes. There you go. You liked that, didn't you? Huh?
It's nice. It's soothing.
It is soothing, and it helps us during the holy month of Ramadan to reflect on some of the things we've discussed already. And we have some more things we need to. And we've gone to someone as our final guest who is working on a thing called Inner Peace. Her name is Dr. Zuleyha Keskin. She is, of course, the course director and senior lecturer for Islamic Studies of Civilization. She's also a co-founder of the Islamic Sciences Research Academy of Australia. It's otherwise known as ISRA. And I think the last time I caught up with Zuleyha was when we co-hosted Ramadan Conversations about a month ago. Time flies when you're having fun. Zuleyha, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, George and Fatih. It's lovely to be here.
Welcome, Zuleyha.
Thank you.
Fatih has got
Yes,
something
last time.
for you to start the conversation.
Does he?
I mean,
Okay.
George, one of the things that we probably left out during the introduction is that while Zuleyha's research focuses on inner peace, she's one of those few people whose inner peace reflects onto their face. And so, you know, when you look at her, you know, there's always this calm and collected and, you know, reflective stance. So welcome, Zuleyha. But I just wanted to ask you, you know, you've mentioned your work on inner peace a number of times, but what was it that actually inspired you to do that work? Why that topic?
Yeah, look, there's probably two things that inspired me to focus on inner peace and dedicate a whole PhD to it, and then to write a number of articles on the topic. I guess one of them is, you know, I've read the works of Said Nursi, a 20th century scholar, and, you know, you read many books, and when I looked at his work, I noticed that he had a very positive approach to life. And, you know, this was despite the challenges that he faced in life. So this is someone who had been sent to exile, who had been imprisoned for, you know, cases that were never proven. And he talks about, actually in his own words, you know, I've lived for 80 years, but I haven't lived any moment of pleasure in those 80 years. But yet, you know, he seemed to always put a positive spin to things, and he seemed at peace in his writings. So I think I wanted to hone into his work. So that would be one thing. But the other thing is that, you know, when I look at, I guess, society, you know, I just realized that, you know, despite being materially comfortable, we are not always happy in society. And, you know, in Western society, where we've got many of the comforts of life, you know, we still have challenges. So much so that, you know, 1 in 7 Australians experience depression in their life. 1 in 4 Australians experience anxiety in their lifetime. According to WHO, 264 million people are affected by depression. Just 2 more stats I'm going to give you. 800,000 people die due to suicide every single year worldwide. And it is the second leading cause of death in 15 to 20-year-olds worldwide. So, you know, with all these factors in mind, I just thought I want to delve into this. And secretly, I want to get inner peace, attain inner peace myself. So maybe there was a personal, selfish side to this as well.
Zuleyha, can I just take that conversation and feed you something else and see how you respond? For me, I've spent a lifetime working in an industry that required me to appear to be calm on the outside. You know, like the swan on the water, or the duck on the pond. Everything looks peaceful and calm, and yet underneath you cannot see the enormous work going on to stay balanced, to stay poised, and stay above water. And I ask you, for me, always it's been about attitude. I think attitude is the key to finding an inner peace, because that allows you to do everything as an obstacle that you can overcome, not as a challenge. Sorry, see it as a challenge rather as an obstacle. When people see things as an obstacle, they stop. But when you see it as a challenge to overcome, then I think we're better armed for that. We're better prepared. We're always taught, we're always teaching people about resilience. As a mother, you're teaching the children to overcome their challenges every day. If you told them that they had enormous obstacles to overcome, that would be harder, wouldn't it? So isn't it about attitude?
It is.
I'm trying to establish.
Yeah, attitude is one word and perspective is another, and that we're probably talking about the same, you know, same thing there. It's about how you perceive a situation, and therefore the attitude that you take on in that situation. And, you know, I think that really can change the whole experience that one has. So, when you're faced with a difficult situation, you can see it as, well, this is my chance to grow. This is my chance to develop myself. Or, if I was to take a negative perspective, I might say, why me? Why does this happen to me all the time? I didn't deserve this. Or, why am I putting myself through this? So your perspective can completely change the way you view the situation, and therefore how you respond to the situation. Like you said, I mean, George, you've become an expert in your field because you've gotten out of your comfort zone a billion times, and there, you could have opted not to, but you would have been deprived of so much. So I think it's accepting that those challenges are rewarding, and when we view it that way, we don't have such a negative connotation or association with challenging experiences. If we did, we wouldn't go work out in the gym. We wouldn't go out for a run. We wouldn't go healthy eating. These are challenging as well, but we do it because our perspective tells us that this is good for us. But, we just need to apply it to other things.
So Zuleyha, I mean, if I'm understanding you correctly, are you saying that what you're proposing is the be-all and end-all to happiness?
I wouldn't. Yeah, look, I wouldn't say it's a be-all and end-all. It's a big factor of it, a big part of it. It's a bit like saying, what do you need to be healthy? You can't just pin it down to eating right. You can't just pin it down to exercise. You can't just pin it down to good sleep. So the perspective is an important part of it, how you perceive a situation, and the benefits that come from it. But the reality is also we need to consider that some people may have gone through trauma and they may need counselling. They may need medication. So that's why I wouldn't say it's be all end all. I would say it's an important contributing factor to our overall well-being, especially our mental health. But we can't negate that there are other things that may need to be done, other behavioural therapy that may be involved. And this is where we do see there's a growing discipline between religion and psychology. I would say it's fairly new, but it's growing. In the Islamic context, Islamic psychotherapy is growing, but other religions also, there are theories that have been established saying that religiosity can help people to overcome challenges, and therefore those. We can use religion as a way of, in social work or in counselling, if it suits that person, obviously. But so I would say that it's part of a bigger picture, Fatih, and but an important part of a lot of people's lives that we shouldn't, negate.
Zuleyha, I think if I may, what we struggle with is finding stillness. Now.
Yes.
We know that when the Imam during Ramadan is talking, or we hear the call to prayer, or there's a beautiful song recited, everything is calm around us. There's a stillness. And from that stillness, whatever is being performed or whatever is being said is more powerful and very easy to receive. And I think the challenge for us today in this modern world of ours is to find moments of stillness in all this disruption, in all the white noise. And you talk about inner peace. I think when you see a tremendous performance on camera, for example, in a film, it never ceases to amaze me, if you look at the performance, how wonderfully still the actor or actress is. They manage to bring great strength out of doing very little. And that's the power. And I think if we can absorb that, and if we can address it and take that perspective and say, okay, it's attitude, it's about moderation, it's about being in command, we talk about poise, having poise, whether it's balance or whether it's in a conversation. You can get overheated and you lose perspective. Am I on the right track to something, or am I way off mark?
No, that's definitely true. And it's very hard, George, in today's day and age, as you said, where we're the white noise, we're bombarded with information. And that's why, in a way, this COVID situation, and this is where going back to trying to see, I guess, the good in situations. When I say that, it doesn't mean that everything is good, but sometimes you've got to think, well, what good can I get out of this? And one thing that we've found with this COVID situation is it has allowed us to be more still. It has allowed us to slow down, whether we like it or not. So for me, it definitely has. And for that reason, this Ramadan has been very, very different for me compared to other Ramadans where it's been so social and so interactive. So, we do need to find that, and we need to live in that moment, in the moment. And all these things I'm saying, they're not always easy to do. And it's like reprogramming your mind as well. It doesn't happen overnight in a second saying, okay, I'm going to be still from now on. But the more we can do it, and the more we talk about it, and therefore it's good that you brought it up, the more we will be able to do it. So we just have to find those moments where we can just have calm. Maybe go out to nature and, reflect.
Connect.
Do all those things and connect, reflect and connect with nature, and just calm ourselves down, disconnect from social media, disconnect from the media maybe for a little while. We've got to work out our strategies. We all are able to do it in our own ways. We just have to work out what works for us. And at the end of the day, we're all seeking inner peace. Everyone wants to be happy. Everyone wants to be content.
As a mother, is it even more difficult for you with children, having to keep them on the straight and narrow, having to keep them, as they say, away from too many devices, too many distractions, because they all are aspiring to improve themselves? So are you a bit of a captain of the ship, or are you just a really shrewd navigator, planning a different course for them?
I'm probably a very cool mother who's like, you know what, just as long as you guys are happy, that's what matters, kind of. Because it's,
you work by stealth.
But it works. They're pretty calm kids, I think. And I try to, and actually once, George, I asked my kids, I said, what's one thing that you've learned from your mum? Because I get them to reflect. They don't always like it. I'm like, it's reflection time now. And they'll roll their eyes like, oh, great. And, one thing that my son said, he goes, it's positive thinking. So it's like this program you try to download onto your kids, for him to say it. And I didn't pay him to say it either. He said it himself. And it's the positive thinking. And my daughter said, I think being thankful. So to me, if they've been able to instill these, even if it's subconsciously, it's good. It will make them happier people on this earth that's full of challenges.
Zuleyha, as usual, you speak an awful lot of sense. Thank you for bringing some inner calm and some inner peace to a very busy program, Ramadan Conversations.
Thanks,
Ramadan Mubarak again.
Ramadan.
She is a cool mum. She's also a very, very wonderful contributor, and we've really appreciated her efforts throughout this holy month of Ramadan. That just about wraps up the program, doesn't it?
It does, George, with 1 week to go till the end of Ramadan. I mean, Sunday is likely to be the first day of Eid. So, we won't, we only have a week to go of these Ramadan conversations. And so, yeah, I mean, and just to let you know, I've had a taste of the spotlight now, George, because now I'm going to look for any opportunity to do this now. So I've got the media bug, but yeah, watch out.
Fatih, it's about passing the baton. I'm very happy for you to pick up the cudgels and go with it. But we must take an opportunity to say thank you to everybody, who's contributed.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, definitely. A big thank you to you, George. I mean, you're talking about passing the baton, but your shoes are very big to fill. But, thank you to you. Thank you to Affinity, Intercultural Foundation. Thank you to AIS. But having said that, let's save the tears for a week from now. And we do have, the program is going ahead for another week at least. And tomorrow we'll be handing over back to Affinity Intercultural Foundation, where they'll be having conversations with guests in the field of interfaith dialogue. and they'll be having some distinguished guests. But then we take back the reins on Wednesday, where we will be, having a discussion with members of the Australian African community, and that's in order to mark Africa Day, which is on the 25th of May, and that's one day before, George, of 26th of May, which is the our National Sorry Day, to mark Sorry Day, which is a day that we commemorate ever since 1998 on the 26th of May, to acknowledge the injustices that we've done in the past towards our Indigenous First Nations, and that's to also commemorate the Bringing Them Home report that was released in 1998. So our guests have a lot to look forward to in the coming week.
Yeah, look, it may well herald the talk of a treaty that we might be able to establish with our first Australians. We can only hope, huh? Inshallah.
Definitely.
As for this
Inshallah.
episode, thank you, Fatih. Yeah, as for this, it will be, as usual, uploaded to the AIS YouTube channel. Should you want to catch up with any of the previous conversations, whether Fatih or I have been in them, don't worry. You can view them again, and you can also find them if you're looking. Just get into the browser there and put in Affinity YouTube channel, and up will come many of the conversations, if not all of them. And once again, Fatih, please stay safe. Thank you for your support, and we wish you a blessed Ramadan.
Thank you.